This analysis explains how arrests are conducted in the United States, when handcuffing is legally permitted, and which fundamental rights are guaranteed to every suspect. Under American law, in the United States, an arrest is a serious, legal action that must be justified. Under the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, police officers cannot lawfully arrest a person based on suspicion alone. A valid arrest requires either a warrant, issued by a judge, or the existence of probable cause, meaning objective facts that would lead a reasonable person to believe a crime has occurred. If an arrest is carried out without these legal foundations, it may be ruled unconstitutional, and any evidence obtained as a result can be excluded from court proceedings. Handcuffing is often misunderstood by the public as a sign of guilt, but under U.S. law, it is considered a temporary safety measure rather than a form of punishment. Officers are permitted to use handcuffs when there is a reasonable concern that a suspect may flee, pose a threat to officers or the public, or when the situation is unstable and requires additional control. Courts have emphasized that the use of restraints must be proportionate to the circumstances. Unnecessary or excessive handcuffing can expose law enforcement agencies to civil liability. A central feature of the American justice system is the presumption of innocence. Every individual who is arrested is legally presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The United States legal system is founded on the principle that the rule of law applies equally to everyone, regardless of the nature of an accusation. Individuals are protected by constitutional safeguards designed to limit the power of the state and prevent abuse. Even during arrest and detention, law enforcement officers must operate within clearly defined legal boundaries. This principle governs how suspects are treated during detention, how evidence is evaluated, and how cases are presented before a judge or jury. Public opinion or media narratives do not override this constitutional protection. The Fifth Amendment provides individuals with the right not to incriminate themselves. When a person is taken into custody and questioned, law enforcement officers are required to inform them of their Miranda rights. These rights include the right to remain silent, the warning that any statements may be used against them in court, the right to consult an attorney, and the right to have an attorney appointed if they cannot afford one. If these rights are not properly communicated, statements obtained during interrogation may be deemed inadmissible. Detention and incarceration in the United States are subject to extensive legal oversight. Correctional facilities are required to meet minimum standards of humane treatment. Detainees must be provided with basic living conditions, access to medical care, and reasonable opportunities to communicate with legal counsel. The law prohibits abuse, degrading treatment, and the denial of fundamental rights. Violations can result in lawsuits, judicial orders, or federal investigations. While the law applies equally to all individuals, American courts recognize the importance of procedural safeguards to protect dignity and prevent misconduct. Searches, supervision, and custodial procedures must follow established legal guidelines. Oversight mechanisms such as internal reviews, body cameras, and independent investigations exist to ensure accountability within the justice system. Law enforcement agencies in the United States are not immune from legal consequences. Officers and departments may be held accountable for unlawful arrests, excessive use of force, violations of constitutional rights, or improper detention practices. Civil lawsuits and judicial review play a critical role in enforcing legal standards and maintaining public trust. The U.S. legal system places strong emphasis on procedure, documentation, and judicial oversight, rather than unchecked authority. Courts act as the final arbiters of legality, reviewing the actions of law enforcement to ensure compliance with constitutional principles. Judges routinely assess the legality of arrests, the use of restraints, the admissibility of evidence, and the treatment of individuals in custody. In addition to constitutional protections during arrest, the American legal system also imposes strict rules on how long a person may be detained before being brought before a judge. This requirement is rooted in the principle that liberty cannot be restricted indefinitely without judicial oversight. In most jurisdictions, An arrested individual must be presented to a court within a specific time frame, often within 48 hours, where the legality of the detention is reviewed. During this initial court appearance, the judge examines whether the arrest was supported by probable cause and determines the conditions of release. Bail decisions, release on recognizance, or continued detention are all governed by legal standards, rather than discretionary punishment. This process reinforces the idea that detention is a temporary, legal measure, not a declaration of guilt. Justice system is the concept of due process, guaranteed by the Fifth and 14th Amendments. Due process requires that all legal proceedings be conducted fairly, transparently, and according to established rules. This includes the right to be informed of charges, the opportunity to challenge evidence, and access to legal representation at every meaningful stage of the process. Due process also limits how authorities may treat individuals. While in custody, conditions of confinement must not amount to punishment. Before conviction, courts have consistently ruled that excessive restraint, denial of basic needs, or degrading treatment may constitute constitutional violations. These standards apply regardless of the severity of the alleged offense. The role of defense attorneys is another essential safeguard within the American legal framework. Attorneys are not merely advocates, but serve as a critical check on government power. They ensure that arrest searches, interrogations, and detention practices comply with constitutional requirements. When violations occur, defense counsel can file motions to suppress evidence, seek dismissal of charges, or pursue civil remedies. Equally important is the role of prosecutors, who are bound by ethical and legal obligations. Prosecutors must pursue justice rather than convictions alone. They are required to disclose exculpatory evidence, respect defendants' rights, and avoid improper influence over legal proceedings. Failure to uphold these duties can result in disciplinary action or overturned convictions. Judicial independence further strengthens the integrity of the system. Judges in the United States are expected to remain impartial arbiters who apply the law without regard to public pressure or political considerations. Their rulings shape how constitutional principles are interpreted and enforced, creating precedents that guide future cases nationwide. Oversight mechanisms extend beyond the courtroom. Civilian review boards, internal affairs divisions, and federal agencies all play roles in monitoring law enforcement conduct. These institutions investigate complaints, review patterns of behavior, and recommend reforms when systemic issues are identified. While not flawless, these mechanisms reflect the system's emphasis on accountability. The emphasis on documentation and evidence is another defining characteristic of American law. Arrest reports, body camera footage, interrogation records, and custodial logs all serve as tools for transparency. This extensive documentation allows courts to reconstruct events and determine whether legal standards were upheld. It also discourages misconduct by increasing the likelihood of detection and review. From a broader perspective, these legal protections serve not only individuals accused of crimes, but society as a whole. By limiting government power and enforcing procedural rules, the system seeks to prevent arbitrary enforcement and maintain public confidence in legal institutions. Trust in the justice system depends on the perception that laws are applied fairly and consistently. Critics often point to cases where the system fails, and such criticism plays an important role in legal development. Many reforms in U.S. law have emerged from judicial decisions, legislative action, and public debate following high-profile cases. The ability to identify flaws and implement changes is a defining feature of a system grounded in constitutional principles. Ultimately, the American legal system is designed to balance competing interests, public safety, individual liberty, and governmental authority. Arrests, restraints, detention, and incarceration are all regulated processes, subject to review, challenge, and correction. This balances what distinguishes lawful enforcement from abuse of power. Understanding these legal foundations provides valuable insight into how justice functions in the United States. It clarifies why procedures matter, why rights are protected, even in difficult circumstances, and why accountability remains central to the rule of law. Through this framework, the system strives to uphold both order and freedom within a constitutional democracy,